Okay, well, it seems that today, today the big story was a plane, a Boeing 777, a jumbo jet, which basically crashed. And at first I was like, was it a bomb? And I don't know if I believe that anymore. I think the tail I think it came down too low and the tail snapped off or whatever. But then again, I really don't know. And the reason I say I don't know is that people who saw it. All right, so if the plane's all right, but anyway, let's just go ahead and talk about what the effect was. The effect of this story basically smokescreened an incident that occurred wherein some Muslim Brotherhood supporters threw an anti-Morsi threw some kids basically off of roofs. They threw some kids off of the roofs. They're in Cairo. The only reason I wonder if this is what I mean by things are more complex now, because a lot of things are staged. Like sometimes I'm wrong about stuff being staged, but um, basically this one I'm going to go ahead and just kind of show you what happened here. Go ahead and skip to the part. All right, so these are some Muslim Brotherhood people. They're pro, and there's some demonstrators up there. Just take a look at the situation. This is why I think it's staged. There just happens to be this like tower that doesn't seem to have any purpose right here in the middle of this thing, and there's just like some people up here, and I mean, it just looks kind of convenient. And then you've got this guy, and this is clearly like the stereotypical. I mean, like he's even got the either the Al Qaeda flag or Muslim Brotherhood flag hanging out his back, and clearly, I mean, he may even have a fake beard on. To be honest with you. So the point is that I'm not saying that it's bad. The point is that I'm worried that now they're basically piggybacking the resistance, and they've already set up their agenda that they're going to have for this, and eventually, like right here, they're going to start. They kind of like spot the guys. They're like, oh, we spotted them. You know, okay, I'm going to go over there and deal with these young boys up here, and the person's not zooming out. The person wants to like focus exactly where they shouldn't be focusing. And let's see. Okay. All right, now they start throwing stuff, but do we watch the things hit the boys? No? So watch. I have some of these guys throwing stuff. Boom, they're throwing stuff. Of course, we're looking over here where there's absolutely nothing while there's damage occurring. Okay, nothing going on. And then right here, you actually see something he's throwing bounce like a bouncing ball. Alright, boom, you see that? Alright, never mind. Whatever, I mean, this could be real. And anyway, I've been trying to analyze this part of the ground right here. Like this might be some kind of like a trampoline or something. Apparently not. This could be totally real, and I'm wrong. Well, this is just, the reason I think it might be fake is when it gets to the part where they're falling down. Okay. You've got your super jihadi right there. He's probably kicking somebody or something. Like they try to escape in that direction. Okay. And, you got this hyper convenient block right here. And what are they going to do? Alright, just a second, I'm sorry. Okay. Up, he just fell down, alright. Alright, hold on. Come on, dude. Alright, you see the cameraman won't actually catch. See, look, he's falling. Oh, okay, it decided to freeze up right when that happened, so we're going to have to do that again. Alright, he's going to fall, and you don't actually see it happen. You know what I'm saying? It's super convenient. Okay, camera turns away, falls. Nope, we're not going to watch him hit the ground. Okay. He's just rolling. Like, that would have definitely cracked your skull open, basically. And yet he's being hit in the head. There's no blood. Alright, here we go. You know, this is just real bad PR for these Muslim or Egyptian people. Some people might be like this, but, and then there we go. That got missed. The person's like, oh, I'm just going to turn away now. You know. It just seems staged. So then the plane thing, it was like they were drumming up suspicion. You said there was a fireball that came out the back or whatever, and you actually have Don Lemon's co-host while the plane was occurring saying, it looks like everybody's just sort of nonchalantly walking out there, so everything must be okay. And then Don Lemon's like, shut up, you're a real journalist, don't do that. And he's like, we don't know everything yet. We don't know why people could be possibly just chilling out there or something. So, alright, let's see. I haven't brought up the thing yet to read and see if you guys got any questions for me. Go ahead and bring that up right now. So today, and the thing is that they didn't seem to make a big deal out of the obvious smoke screen that was going on. So once again, it would appear that they are using the military coup against Morsi to suggest that through that they will find out that Egypt, or Egyptian radicals, the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, was used to perform the operation in Benghazi, and this will implicate Obama as being part of a large Saudi conspiracy. What is it, the Shia versus the Sunni? Which one's which? Iran is Sunni? Which one? I'm going to go ahead and look up right now so I know this once and for all the way it works, because I don't know the differences between Sunni and Shia. But you could say maybe they're like Protestant and Catholic or something, I don't know. But I do know that the radical side, the Al-Qaeda side, is not in line with Iran. And, you know, you have to be really concerned because supposedly, according to Islamic texts, the Antichrist or the Antichrist or the the Dajjal is supposed to come out of Iran. So we have to be careful, essentially, because they could be setting up Project Bluebeam, which is this eventual, you know, staging of the end of the world, basically. So, you know, the whole one-eyed thing and everything, that comes from Islamic texts. So let's take a look at the distinction. A Sunni-Shia war is what they're trying to say. I'm just going to go ahead and watch it together.
See a Middle East of progress and peace. We want to see the three great religions that sprang forth from our regions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, coexist in peace and in mutual respect.
What should be the future of the Middle East 10 years from now? I'll tell you, it should be based, the whole concept of stability, security, statehood should be based on several parameters. First of all, we have to accept that it is very, very important to create a coalition, a Sunni coalition that will be led by Turkey. Why Turkey? Iran. Yes. What should Israel do? Iran is a huge threat. We cannot live with Iran having a nuclear military power. We should not accept it. The question is, how much time do we have, and what should we do? Now, for me, how much time do we have is with a correlation to what should we do, because if we are going to act unilaterally without any American or international support, without creating the atmosphere in the Middle East, it is not only that we shall have to face the reaction. Probably it's too late. All what we can achieve with our military power probably is to delay the program for, I don't know, 12, 18, or 6 months.
All right, let me just back this up and say this dude is the former Israeli director of Shin Bet. So I don't know what that is. Maybe some sort of intelligence branch. I think actually they're the police, like the law enforcement of Israel.
Right. But if the assumption is that we are a part of a coalition that based on a kind of a Sunni coalition, and America, what do you mean by Sunni coalition? Sunni coalition, that means that Turkey with Egypt, with Jordan, with Saudi Arabia understand.
Boom. Okay, there it is. So you see, the Sunnis are supposed to be the radical Islamists, and that's kind of weird though. They're like supposed to not just be radical, but actually like the freedom fighters or whatever. And the Shia is sort of like the standing power.
That the major conflict is with Shia, led by Iran, and they create this coalition, as I mentioned before, in order to create this coalition that will face Iran, the Palestinian Israeli coalition. Okay, so this is the coalition.
You see, so the way, they want to, so it's really kind of backwards and weird, because here you've got this Israeli, maybe even being a little bit tipped off. Like sometimes I think the Israelis are kind of being fooled by the Masons or the protocols or whatever, or the elders. But what I think is going on is that this is very odd, because here you see that the Sunni regime, or specifically Saudi Arabia, is supposed to be fundamentally opposed to Iran, and religiously. Excuse me. And the issue is that now they're turning against that Sunni opposition, right? With Obama basically was backing the Sunnis, and if we start hitting home that the Israelis were very much either on the side of or were propagating the effects of the Sunni regime, because the Americans don't know the distinction. The Americans are going to be like Muslims. They're going to be like, there's Muslims doing radical Muslim stuff. And what may eventually occur is that they might try to say the Sunnis were against the Israelis, right? And that they might try to make a conspiracy out to be something which is not a Zionist conspiracy, but rather a Sunni conspiracy, specifically championed by, he says Turkey, but not really. They're trying to like keep it on the down low what's going to happen, and it's going to be Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia, because they were all over, say, the official story of 9/11, they're going to make it out to be. And then I think like not too long ago, June 3rd maybe, a Saudi prince basically got turned down by this woman, and then he abducts the woman, sexually, whatever, he basically rapes her, kills her, and then a unmarked van, just dumped her off on the side of the road in broad daylight in front of everybody, and then left. So the Saudi Arabian royalty will be patsied. They will be patsied. A lot of intelligence agency They've been setting this up for a long time, and it's going to happen. And I can't even tell if I actually like it or want it to happen or whatever, but what I don't want to see is that in the process of us sort of like taking Obama down and taking his Saudi thing down, is that we like champion the Jews or we champion Israel. We have to understand the role that Israel and the Jews played in basically creating the entire patsy, just like they did with Hitler and the Nazis. Because what they eventually do, what they try to do, is justify / outlaw the religion of Islam. I mean, I really don't like the timetable that they work off of. They work off of timetables that are like decades in the making, you know, and it's just really, I'm not on your fucking timeline. I don't really like being held back so that your prophecies can be fulfilled. So anyway, what's going to end up happening is throughout a long time, the Middle East will become secularized, and the Sunni regime will be patsied, and there might even be some sort of a war against the Saudi, like the king, like really you can start to see how the movie 300 basically kind of like is, you know, you've got like the slavers, like the Saudi royalty was behind it, and they're kind of like, I mean, you got Breitbart, and Breitbart's a controlled opposition group, and Breitbart's a Jew, headed up this Jewish thing. WND, the same thing. And they're all hot and bothered over an Islamic conspiracy. And then I think I watched, yeah, let's go ahead and watch that too. Some woman saying that we need to attack Iran because there's an Islamic conspiracy that one day Islam will take over the entire world just to bring about the Shia, that's what it was, the Shia the Shia Messiah, which is just like, you sons of bitches, you know, just like they did with the Nazis. They were like, we Aryans are better than everybody else, therefore we need to sort of purge everybody else. And it's kind of like, actually, you just created something out of nothing, which was basically the Jewish religion, which is like, we're better than us Jews are better than everybody else, and we're going to purge everybody else, or control everybody else. We're the master race. So let us now go ahead and watch this thing with this, this is really an example of how much bad public PR the Israelis and the Zionists are getting.
For the bloodshed.
I don't know what's going on with Russell Brand to have gotten himself so involved recently.
I believe that the key to this, if we're going to do anything, we should have our eye fixed on where our interests lie. And where our interests lie, as a West's interests lie, is in neutralizing Iran. We have allowed Iran the time over many years through this farce of talking to people.
That was an informed public, by the way. The United Kingdom is apparently, as of late, becoming extremely informed.
People who cannot be talked to continue with its pursuit of a nuclear bomb, with which it intends, it says, to commit genocide against Israel, a state which is declared for the last 25 years war against us. That is the problem. That is the problem. War against a clear threat to this country's interest.
That was amazing. You can go and watch the rest of it if you want. So that's clearly, I mean, are they not calculating the, and so if they do anything or they stage something to sort of get us to hate Iran, I think even if Iran actually did it, we would be like, no, the Israelis did it and they're blaming it on Iran. I think that the notion of conspiracy theory is the primary problem for the Israelis right now, and they deserve to be because 9/11, what happened there when they fell back on Osama bin Laden. They did so because the original script went bad. The original script went so bad that they were supposed to blame it on like a radical Islamic sect that was, loyal to the Palestinians, but they failed to do that, and so they fell back on Osama bin Laden, and thus everything that's shitty in the world has to do with this single event. And Bush re-engineered it for an Iraq war invasion. I'll be honest with you, I don't think that, I don't know that Saddam Hussein actually died, though. I think they staged the hanging, because there's no footage of him actually, like it's very obscure, the footage. It's almost like they wanted to get him and they captured him. But, I don't know. I really just, I wish I knew more, but it just seems a little fishy. Like, the people are like, you got rid, you made, you did a shitty job with our country, and Saddam Hussein's like, one day you'll thank me. And, it was just like a He-Man cartoon or something like that. It was just, I hate being lied to. Alright, let me see if there's any comments. Why would the cabal make the Brotherhood look bad? I was under the impression they were running them. That's right. So, the thing is that Obama, the Obama version of the cabal, is running them. And you've actually got McCain now trying to champion some sort of further investigation of Benghazi. And you can't trust McCain, because McCain is highly involved in familially with the USS Liberty incident, which I can't remember. His father basically played a role in covering up what happened in the Israeli. So what's going on is the American people don't make a distinction. They don't understand Israel's role in funding, not Israel, but the Zionist role in basically becoming buddy-buddy with the Saudi Arabians, the Saudis. And ever since 9/11 with the shit, they've basically planned on having the time of their life until, because even back then, they were funding Muslims to move into the European countries. Isn't that kind of weird? It's like, why are all of these Turkish people moving into Germany? Well, and then having like very, very poor attitudes towards the European peoples. And, despite the European people being like super, white guilt, politically PC, being PC towards them. So what they were doing was trying to start making people think that the Saudi, because when 9/11 happened, and despite the heavy involvement of Saudi Arabia in the official story, even though it was all Israel in the actual story, when Saudi Arabia was highly involved with the official story, what was going on was they were setting up the idea, because we flew Osama bin Laden's family off to Saudi Arabia, and then the Boston bombing happens, and then controlled opposition's like, look, a Saudi prince is involved, and then that gets swept under the rug. So they're patsying Saudi Arabia, basically. They're patsying, it's just really, really odd what they're trying to do. But essentially what they're doing, what their goal is it's not even the destruction of Iran. What they want to piggyback onto, now they're actually kind of like utilizing Iran to, like, they're actually taking Iran's good public relations, despite the fact that, Iran is, damn it, what's his name? Really, there's just a million different angles they're trying to come at this from. But you've got the Iranian president, former president, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, literally laying out everything for you and saying the Holocaust was fake. It was basically a program to deport the, it was a Zionist move to deport Jews to the newly formed state of Israel. And, what real, and then also that 9/11 was a conspiracy, and it was perpetuated by enemies of it, or it was perpetuated by Israel to create wars against the enemies of Israel. And what's the most terrible thing is that Ahmadinejad told everyone the truth, but was probably the poorest X Factor vehicle for doing so. It was almost like the powers that be were like, haha, this is great. I can't believe he did that. He looks like such a an untrustworthy rat. You know what I mean? And I hate saying that. I mean, maybe he's a good man, or maybe he's not. But the thing is that I think he is. I mean, I don't know. I don't have any reason to suspect otherwise. But the thing is that if that would have been me, and I would have had that level of authority or voice, I would have turned it around by now for everybody. And or simply, instead of donating the $10 billion to Assad, he could have just gave me a small fraction of that total sum, and I would have turned everything around by now anyway. So, it's just, really the narrative is extremely volatile and frail, and they're totally fine with making Obama out to be a conspirator, and they're totally fine with it finding out that the Muslim Brotherhood and Al-Qaeda were being funded by Obama, who coincidentally happens to bow to the Saudi king, and thus might be an agent of the Saudis who is sent to infiltrate. That basically there is this Muzzy-Commie connection rather than a Jew-Commie connection. And, so they've taken like the negative aspects of Judaism, like they did with the supremacy aspect, and then they made the Nazis basically out to be exactly what the Jews are, which are supremacists, and then they attacked the Nazis, and then like Jews were suddenly like not like that. Jews were the exact opposite of that, even though they're actually the same thing as that. And now they're doing this thing where they're taking the idea of like Jews infiltrating, subverting, causing, immigration and all that stuff, and they're saying no, now that's a Islamic conspiracy, it's a Saudi conspiracy, and we're going to take down the Saudis. And what's the whole point? Well, all the Jews, they want to foment a struggle in the Middle East. They want to take out the Muslims, and they're basically co-opting a lot of bleeding heart liberals. I'm a bleeding heart liberal, but I mean, they're co-opting everybody to be like, they need our help, when really they're over there sabotaging the shit out of them in order to get us to think that they need our help, or that they need to be progressed or something like that. And honestly, they're in the middle of the desert, okay? And the only way that they basically flourish is from, Western intervention, not Western intervention, but basically like, I don't know, you do have to wonder, why do they have so much oil over there? And it may be the case that what it is they have so much oil because that's the only resource that they're able to get. Like maybe we have a lot of oil, but the reason that we don't know it is that we like the idea that the Middle East has a monopoly over it. And this ties into the energy conspiracy, because suddenly it's like, well, if the Saudis are behind everything, then the fact of the matter is that it's a big oil conspiracy. Like, okay, Bush allowed the Saudis to do what they did because Bush has connections to the oil industry, and the oil industry is a cartel that's holding down all the alternative energy fuel resources. And the Saudis are basically on the same side as Bush and his oil thing. So I don't know. It's pretty obvious what's going on, but is their execution very poor? Yes. What are the implications? Well, the implications are everything that looked like it was a conspiracy under Obama probably is now. And that's why I'm like, they have basically a timetable, because you can't get to the trial for, say, Dzhokhar Tsarnaev or James Holmes or, you know, these things will be paid attention to and they will be public. And these things will be paid attention to. They will be public. And if it's true that they want to spin the official story like they were conspiracies, then that's basically what you're going to see. So the people that are basically running those conspiracies have absolutely no clue that they're set up to be patsies. They're set up to fall. And they didn't understand. They thought, you know what, we're in this NWO version conspiracy, and we may have actually stayed that way. There could have been some sort of incentive to be like, whoa, this whole idea of taking down the Saudi king, I didn't realize the American people were such sheep. You know, we're just going to go ahead and just use Obama to turn everyone into a bunch of slaves. And, you know, is that infeasible? No. But what I essentially did was scare them. And they realized, you know, like, there is we're going to go ahead and now and co-opt everybody who's being tipped off and say, okay, well, what's going on is we're taking down a big conspiracy. We're taking down a big conspiracy that's leading into high levels of government. The Supreme Court's being blackmailed by Obama. Obama and his regime are like doing all of this stuff, and really Obama's answering to the Saudi king. And there's been this big hidden shadow empire that doesn't have anything to do with Jews, or doesn't have anything to do with, but, you know, even if it did have to do with Jews, it was because they were trying to make it look like it was the Jews, but really it was the Saudis the whole time. And it's like, no, okay, so, you know, everybody's becoming extremely informed, and they would probably have to do this sort of thing very soon. And all of this stuff about, like, martial law, FEMA camps, killing 90% of the population are all just scare myths. You know, it could even be argued, because what it really boils down to is the Jews wanting the Messiah to come. Period. They want the Messianic age. They want the Messiah to come. I'll just show you. Rabbi Lubavitch and Messiah, and I love you, Google, for being able to pick all this stuff up. And Lubavitch, BB. Okay. And there we go. Alright, don't see it. Rabbi and BB, let's just do that. Come on, dude. Maybe I should say Netanyahu. Rabbi and Netanyahu. If I could, like, beat the shit out of somebody, it would be Netanyahu. Okay, here we go. This is all I care about. This is everything that's going on.
Netanyahu metnin gelişiyle ilgili daha çok gayret göstermesi emrediyor. Bir de kalıp film. Var mı o film bizde?
Some sort of Arabic TV that's filming this. All right, here we go. 1990. This is before he was prime minister. Blessing and success, a double portion for your benediction. TB Netanyahu. I came to ask for blessing and help. Rabbi, in everything. Netanyahu, in all areas, both personal and political. Rabbi, since we last met, many things have progressed. Netanyahu, Many things have progressed, says the rabbi. Netanyahu says, many things have progressed. The rabbi says, what hasn't changed, however, is that the Messiah hasn't come. So do something to hasten his coming. Mashiach. Netanyahu. We're doing. See how he said, and then Lubavitch, apparently it's not enough, since many hours have already passed and he's still not here. But there are a few hours left in the day, so try still for today. Yes, says Netanyahu. Good tidings of joy. You know that the Chassidim are careful to do everything with joy. And you see how they're talking to each other like they're gangsters, like they're, you know what I mean? That's clearly like, how do I say? I mean, let's just look at their mannerisms real quick. We're gonna go ahead and do that. I mean, have you not seen this in watching The Godfather? They hate Christians. They hate Christians. They hate you. I mean, they hate Muslims. There's really no way to describe just how much they think. Like, no matter if you're better than them, they don't think that you're better than them. They just think like, oh, you're better than us in this way, just like somebody would be better than me at like jumping high. But it's all meant to serve me. So you're not actually better than me. What you are is just like, you know, you're an animal that has these good traits that are basically designed to serve me. You're not better than me intrinsically. So it's really, that's like their way of supremacy. It's a religious sort of thing. They literally believe that their souls share some sort of connection to God, like God is basically just this not fallen Jew, basically. So all of them, like, I think there's some sort of a, I'll just read some of the Talmud for you. How about that? Right here on the Google Plus. Come on. Did they delete that? Oh, they turned it into a spam. Gives my thing a virus site. Okay. So I can't read the Talmud anymore because apparently it was too much bombshell. Okay, let's see if there's any more comments. Sorry, guys. Alright. Comments. Bravo. Yes. Maybe blacks will be pissed Obama is going down for the conspiracy and not Bush. Well, that's the thing. Like, if they make it a Saudi conspiracy, Bush gets implicated also. Which he really should. I mean, basically, Obama sort of expanded the Bush doctrine. If there isn't, you say, if there isn't full disclosure, then this may ignite more racial tensions. I'm actually trying to perform damage control. Like, people don't think it's damage control, but it really is. To reveal something as huge as the Civil War being fought to dispel racial tensions. Like, I'm not joking you. Like, the entire reason that the American Civil War was fought was the Founding Fathers co-opting an abolitionist movement. The abolitionist movement was actually funded by the international bankers. The international bankers wanted to specifically release the malcontents, the blacks, into the community and also vilify the white Americans. So the internationalist bankers were funding the abolitionists in an attempt to, first they were trying to save the institution of slavery, which they were making money off of the importation of, say, cotton and other stuff from the South. And of course, you've got the Southerners who want to protect the institution because they're around the blacks and they know how shitty that would be to free them for everybody because nobody would get along, and yeah, we kind of get along. We kind of had some pretty good PR back in the, 80s and 90s, but all that went away because what they then did was pump massive amounts of money into, which they had always done, but then they're on record basically funding the hip hop industry and weeding out, say, the cool that could ever be contributed by white people, and basically making it all black, and basically just raising racial tensions to a popping point. And it could have kept going. They could have been like, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to, turn the American people into a sort of mixed race culture that will have an easier time controlling or something like that. And you know, I mean, that's what they would have thought basically, and then they could have done that, but they didn't end up doing that. And it's really important to understand, I think, like what role, because they essentially allowed Ron Paul to foment a resistance. It's not like Ron Paul was in on it. Ron Paul didn't know he was basically allowed to sort of survive. And Alex Jones is smart enough that he may actually see what's actually going on, basically. But does he actually know? No, I think he's smart enough to know, though. I think he's smart enough to know or suspect. But any decent conspiracy, a lot of conspiracy theorists, unfortunately, just bandwagon. The conspiracy theorists are just like, Ron Paul says this, it's got to be that way, or you know, like Obama funding Al Qaeda bad, okay, I'm going to go that way, you know. And so a lot of times you'll see Alex Jones basically being kind of the spokesperson for which way everyone's going, even though the same people don't really like Alex Jones or Ron Paul, or you know, so they bandwagon. But what they don't understand is that's either allowed to foment or, you know, controlled opposition. They're going to piggyback stuff onto it, and the real you know, conspiracy theorist says, wait a minute, I think it's a little fishy that mainstream news was willing to entertain the birth certificate conspiracy, and it's also a little fishy that the same mainstream news that won't even utter 9/11 conspiracy or 9/11 truth is in fact you know, sort of entertaining, you know, Fast and Furious being conspiracy. And these kind of things are just, there's plenty of real conspiracies that they will never touch. Like, I could be the Bradley Manning for getting scrambled on my phone call, basically, or I could be the just that alone, you know, and or Brandon Robb or whatever, who got arrested because he posted some song lyric about rolling heads or something like that. I don't know. And I know the real story about Brandon Robb. Brandon Robb was actually in a fallback position in case Aurora ever got around for a Ron Paul supporting redhead, basically, that was an extremist. Okay. So what else? You know, so the problem, okay, I'll go ahead and tell you what our number one problem is. It is the mainstream media. I can't actually blame the sheeple. I can't blame the sheeple more than I can blame the mainstream media. So the sheeple, you know, a lot of people might think, well, the problem is just apathy. People aren't politically involved. Well, the thing is that the mainstream media has complexified things to such an extent that people can't get involved. People, unless they basically, you know, really just want to go out of their way to entertain the concepts of corruption, are justified in the sense that they never conceived of a centuries-old conspiracy, you know. And so, especially when you've got all of this pressure, I mean, they've got so much pressure, and so I used to just absolutely hate and loathe the sheeple, and I can't, I guess. I mean, there's plenty of people that I know very well who would qualify as sheeple, and nonetheless cannot be blamed for the extreme distance one has to climb in order to achieve the level of, you know, even then when people climb it, they get very easily turned into different or turned off by all sorts of disinformation campaigns within the conspiracy theory movement. And so, you know, the sheeple are seriously just not just victims, but slaves. Like in their own bodies, they are slaves. And then what really sucks is whenever you're not a mental slave, you start to realize how much of a physical slave you are. And a sociological slave. I mean, you can't really engage the public. So you might think, well, you're not a physical slave. You can get out your door. And it's like, yeah, but once I get out my door, like, my interactions are essentially with zombies. And so there is a sense in which I can't use the public. Like, I used to think stuff like the movie The Arrival or some sort of paranormal event or, say, extraterrestrial event occurs to you, that you could just run into the middle of the town square and then tell everybody, and everybody would believe you, and then you could get the whole town on your side, and you could go, you know, nationally. Well, that would basically, that could possibly happen with aliens or or supernatural phenomena, possibly. But let me go ahead and tell you, it's not going to happen with conspiracy theory, because, well, first off, they'll know, like, you won't get away with it. The moment you start talking, federal agents will move in and probably stage your deaths, and after, like, literally torturing you and stuff like that. So there's basically a pretty good, you know, large capacity to essentially not blame the sheeple. But the mainstream media, let me go ahead and tell you something. If there's any extremists out there, that's all I'm saying. You want to know where to blah blah blah. The mainstream media, the people that you see reporting the news with smiles on their faces, and you might think like, oh, they'll just get another person in there. There's plenty of people, and it's kind of like, yeah, well, you know, the other person has to want to get in there, basically. Oh my God. It sucks, man. There's just no free speech. I can't really talk. But you get what I'm saying, right? Or maybe you do. How I'm like, blah, 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 about the mainstream media. Yeah, let's just go ahead and, you know, we're going to go ahead and watch that. Ken O'Keefe, Zionist, 9/11. And he lays it out for you just perfect. Just perfectly. You. I want you. Perfect. This is perfect.
Well, I won't argue that civilization meant something different in the past, but if we're to live in the 21st century, I say we define it correctly. To me, civilized means not indulging in acts that would be counter to the values that are reflected by the majority of people. The American people themselves are not necessarily barbaric, but the policies of America are in fact barbaric. They're war crimes, they're crimes against humanity. What I see in America, really, coming from the American perspective, is manipulation after manipulation, indoctrination feeding into that in a propaganda machine that gets the result that's intended. America has lived off of war, and Eisenhower famously said, beware of the military-industrial complex. We can go back to the sinking of the Lusitania, which was a very predictable occurrence when we sent that ship into the waters that were known to have German U-boats. After it sunk, the American people went into a war that they really wanted no part of. Shortly after that, we had World War II. The American people, again, wanted no part of it, and yet Franklin Delano Roosevelt was fully aware of the coming attack by the Japanese fleet and made sure that they would incur maximum casualties on that day. Once again, the American people manipulated into
without
war.
Pearl Harbor, America would have been dragged into that war because Hitler declared war on America rather than it being the other way around.
Inevitable, and if that would, but are you saying that? What I'm saying is that the American president knew about a fleet coming to kill American soldiers, sons and daughters, and that he allowed that to happen, and in fact made sure that American sons and daughters were murdered needlessly. Well, we are in a perpetual state of war now, aren't we? Whether we go back to the overthrow of Mossadegh in Iran, CIA coups in Central and South America, we can go back to the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which is acknowledged to be an absolute lie at this point. How about the USS Liberty, in which Israel, America's ally, attacked a U.S. Navy ship
for hours and killed 34 U.S. sailors. The Sixth Fleet was then called back. Defenses of that ship were called back by McNamara and Lyndon Johnson. These are all established facts covered up. That was intended to bring us into the Six-Day War and attack Egypt and have the first invasion and occupation of those lands in that time. We have since then.
That's really important because, see, the Egyptians remember that event, and they remember their defeat, and they remember who was behind that. So the Egyptian thing could be basically pretty good, so we'll find out.
Had other occurrences, such as 9/11, which is the be-all, end-all of manipulation, to buy into the notion that Osama bin Laden and 19 hijackers are responsible for this event is the height of lunacy. It is the most ridiculous conspiracy of all, and it is the excuse for this so-called war on terror, which is in fact a war of terror, committing state-sponsored terrorism to the tune of 1 million dead Iraqis and counting, millions of orphans, and millions of refugees, never mind Afghanistan, and now attacking Pakistan as well. So, who is responsible? Absolutely inside job. The U.S. government and intelligence agencies, including Mossad, including the Mossad agents who were in Liberty Park, who were told to go and capture the event on cameras and admitted to it in Tel Aviv on Israeli television. They obviously had foreknowledge of the event.
The Israelis are the ones who...
The Israelis and the Americans, they could not have done it without the government and the inside job that was required.
Well, obviously, can you give us an insight into the disparities?
When it comes to the people, those that are the backbone of America across the spectrum, then America is not a nanny state, and that's what the politicians say. When it comes to the bankers, $1 trillion is brought to bear for the bankers to save them. When it comes to war and the war-making industries, plenty of money can be extracted from the American taxpayer to fund war. But when it comes to taking care of its own people, there is destitution, poverty, hunger, tremendous injustice. Home of the Free has, I believe, the largest prison population in the world, if not certainly one of the biggest prison populations in the world. The working class people are being used up, exploited, sent off to wars, and yet the American government continues to claim that it can't take care of things back home. It's all part of a game, again, that uses us, working class people, as pawns. You think it'd be wise to face up to it and realize it.
Do you think the American electorate would support higher taxes that are needed to correct this distribution?
No, we don't need to raise taxes. We need to stop fighting wars halfway around the world based on lies and investing insane amounts of money in policies that equate to mass murder. If we do that, all that money would now be freed up for the American people. We don't need to give the bankers $1 trillion. Those are the same people that are running our economies into the ground, living high on the hog. So we don't need to raise taxes. We could lower taxes and take care of
Let me bring Robert in.
God.
America in decline anytime soon?
Absolutely. I believe in catalyzing events, having the ability to really raise people's consciousness and allow them to think again. Let us not underestimate. I will say that the American people are largely being hoodwinked, and I would even go so far as to say that anyone who believes in the official version of 9/11 has been more than hoodwinked, and I repeat my willingness to debate anyone at this table and beyond on that very subject. I say that the American people have it within their capacity to actually effect change and be the ideal that they wish they were. That is possible.
But if you have no faith in the democratic system as it is, are we talking about another American revolution? You know, what are you talking about with people power?
The first thing I would start with is take control of your media, because the media is passing on information that allows people to be hoodwinked into buying into wars that are based on lies. If that propaganda machine did not exist, you would not be so stupid as to be led into a war that is going to equate to war crimes.
Well, the media is used in all countries.
Okay. There he goes saying, basically, you have to get control of your media. So I've always been sort of propelling or propagating or, supporting the idea of alternative media because, to be honest with you, the only thing that will get us out of this situation is the concept of alternative media. But you know what I'm saying when I'm saying, like, if you want to stop the conspiracy, you've got to stop the mainstream media.
To promote wars.
But since America has the most profound impact on the world, and we're talking about America tonight, more than any other nation, they need to take control of their propaganda machine, which is hoodwinking the people. Also, look at the system of indoctrination. Question what you've been told. I, like every other American, grew up believing that my nation was the greatest in the world, that it was the beacon of freedom and democracy. Any critical look at the history of America, especially over the the last 100 years makes it clear that not only is America antagonistic and destroying popular democracy around the world, but without question is the #1 terrorist by any reasonable definition of the word.
All right. All right, I'm back to you guys. I'm looking at the comments. We're about to be shutting off. I'm going to answer the comments, and then I got to call it quits. Let's see. Kinatar, the banksters also owe the Saudis an asshole of money, an ass pile of money that came due to 10 years ago. Came due about 10 years ago. Problem is they lost most of it during the Latin American debt crisis. Tell me more about that. So you're saying that the bankers are being held hostage in the official story to the Saudis? Tyranny TNN says, good evening, my man. Tyranny says, today, 9 Eastern, I look at the closed window shades and said to my girlfriend, look outside. They were glowing pale colors. I stepped outside and saw total and distinct a mega rainbow video coming. Oh, okay, cool. I actually had somebody saying that you do really good videos, TNN. You really do. I suggest everybody subscribe to Tyranny News Network. He does make really great videos. He did a really great blood trail analysis on Aurora. If you guys have any really good information, get it to my buddy TNN, because he can actually produce some pretty good videos. Kenatar says the South had 3 times the GDP of the North. The South had 3 times the GDP. I agree with that notion right there, and that has to do, I think, with the level of international banker funding that was coming into the South, and that's essentially why. So the Civil War was fought basically because the Founding Fathers were attempting to. They even created the nation, basically, the colony of Liberia and Africa, because they realized that there would be too much racial tension by releasing the blacks into society. I mean, because if the blacks were like Africans, and then they were like, they had their own thing, and they were like basically civilized and stuff like that, and civilized, then they could have like, came over later, just like regular African people do now, and they would have had much better PR with the public. You'd be like, oh, I really like the Africans. The African people are really cool, instead of all the terrible stereotypes that we have now because the international bankers released them into, and that was back before, that was probably before, it's turned in, Africa's been turned into the HIV terrorist hellhole that it is now. So, that would have been good. So that's why the Civil War was fought. That is what warranted the Civil War, not what actually happened. So basically, Lincoln was co-opting. He was represented a group of founders, basically, who was co-opting the abolitionist movement that was originally used to protect the institution of slavery, ironically, and was going to enact laws, and he was killed before he could do it, which would have freed the slaves and deported them either to the, recently taken over by the slaves nation of Haiti, or, put them, probably would have taken them to Liberia, which was an American-style colony, still is an American-style state, which is nevertheless, my cat. Okay, so where am I? They killed Hendrix and Cobain. Probably. I think that when people got too much, there's just such an obvious case for conspiracy that all it takes is for somebody with those dispositions to get into conspiracy, and they've already got a voice, and so they go to talking and they get killed. Kinatar. They actually found munitions aboard the Lusitania a couple years ago while diving on the wreck. The sinking of the Lusitania, I can't remember, what did that cause? I'm just going to look it up right now. I feel stupid for not knowing. Oh, this is the thing that started World War, well, it started America's involvement in World War I, perhaps. And I'll need to look into that. So that was a false flag? Okay. And the van full of Israelis and explosives that was caught on the George Washington Bridge, that was disappeared from the news. That's right. So as long as we see Israel and, I mean, I hate to say it, but Israel and Jews and Zionists taking flack, then we're going to be okay, because you don't want them to ride the good side of the resistance wave. If you start to see that, then you have to back off a little bit on your resisting. Do check out my rainbow from earlier today. I will do that. Okay. A very good night to everybody. We are up. I'll see you tomorrow, same time. TB23 out.